Welcome to the Blue Star Connection. I am Kelly, your host tonight. Tonight we are talking about my spiritual journey, the roller coaster story that I've been on for a while now. But before I start, I'd like to start with the Eternal Teachings, written by Christopher Timms. So if you can sit back, close your eyes, just take some nice, slow, deep breaths in and out, and just listen to the words, and just relax. There is an essence that binds and sustains and is all life. This essence, this living presence, is the oneness that you are. The oneness that you are. Shapeless, formless, and eternal are you, with no boundaries and no container. You were never born, so you can never die. This is the oneness that you are. This is the oneness that you are. With nothing to grow into, you nothing to become, for you are all life. You are all life. There is no separation between you and me. The air that we breathe, the sun that shines upon us, or the earth that we walk on, no separation at all. All life is one, always has been, and always will be. And this oneness is the air and the earth. This oneness that is the season for the harvest and the laughter of the children. This is the oneness that you are. This is the oneness that you are. This cannot be taught to you, for this is not to be understood. This is not to be experienced, appreciated, or realized. Accept this and be free. Accept this and be free. Accept this, all of this, and be. Just be. Just be. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose. Hold it. And slowly let it out, placing your tongue to the roof of your mouth to help ground you. Like I said, my name is Kelly. I am going to talk about my wild and crazy ride on my quest for spirituality. I was telling a few people that were online, I feel like I've done this last night. Throughout the night, I was contemplating of how I was going to start and what I was going to talk about. So I spent 12 hours last night doing this program. So we'll see what ends up coming out of my mouth during this time. Or maybe it'll just be a great April Fool's for April 1st. So I would say my spiritual journey, not that we're not all spiritual beings, started around 2010. But knowing now what I know as a young child, I spent many summers with my grandparents, and one of the biggest things that my grandmother gave me was the love of nature. She would take me on long walks in the evenings through the woods. She would take time out of her day and take me for walks along the river in the water. She would take me to go see sunsets down by Lake Michigan, and we'd watch the sunsets. We'd walk the Sleeping Bear sand dunes, and she did that until she was 88 years old. And at that time, she said to me, "This is the last time I'm going to walk these." So the love of nature has been instilled in me for a very long time. Back in 2010, the early part, I'd been working in the ER for a very long time. I've had 3 kids by then, married for quite some time. And January, February, I started to become unrest. And I had a conversation with a girlfriend of mine as I was driving to work saying, I have all this anxiety. I don't know what I want in my life. Everything is just overwhelming. I just felt really overwhelmed. And she said, well, you should go to the doctor and see if they can't give you something to help relax you. So reluctantly I went, and I didn't like what they gave me, so I decided not to do it and tried to change my attitude and try to look at life a little bit differently. And it worked for a while. And then in October, I think it was October 3rd, I don't know if that's the correct date or not, but anyways, my husband and I got the kids to bed. It was a Sunday night. I had to work the next day. He had to work the next day. And we decided to watch a movie. And after watching the movie, went to bed. And the next day, I woke up extremely dizzy, lots of ringing in my ears, didn't feel right, got the kids to school, ended up calling off work. So after calling off, getting the kids back, went back to work a couple days later, went to one of the ER docs and said, I really feel like crap. Can you look in my ears? What's going on? And they said, there's nothing going on with your ears, but we highly suggest you follow up with an ENT, ears, nose, and throat doctor. So I did that, went there, saw him, put me on some medications, made me feel worse. And I decided there was a lady at my kids' school who did more holistic health care. And I decided to go up to her because I just felt like my inner being was like, you need something different than what's going on here. And I talked to her and I said, I need somebody else. I said, this isn't working. I need a different approach. She gave me a name of a chiropractor who she had been friends with for a very long time, and I went and saw him. And long story short, he gave me stuff to help clear out my gut. I changed my diet, and along the process of it, I was asking questions about what are these supplements? What is this? I've never heard of this stuff. And he gave me a pamphlet, and he said, you need to check out this lady in January. I highly recommend it. So as I'm going through my healing process, I decide I'm going to go to this seminar, and the seminar was on hair analysis and just how to read hair analysis, why you would want to get a hair analysis, the importance of balancing the different minerals in the body, and also, she started talking about things that I didn't learn in nursing school, like the Hewer's chart and how the endocrine system was attached and how it all just kind of worked itself around. And I was blown away. I'm like, I've never heard of this stuff. I've never seen this stuff. What do you mean, the whole food nutrition, there's no side effects? I'm like, everything has a side effect. That's medicine. Medicine has side effects. So through that journey of me healing my gut, healing myself, 9 months later or so, I realized that my hearing was coming back, that I was feeling better, and life was starting to improve. And during this time, the same chiropractor was also kind of feeding me information. And he's like, I said, so how can I find out more stuff about this? So then I started learning about whole food nutrition, and then I realized, you know what, I need something else. I need to do something else than just working in an ER where it's really stressful, and just being able to have more time with my kids too. So I started searching, and I came up with craniosacral therapy, and I decided to take my first class through Upledger, Craniosacral Therapy 1, and my husband gave me his points because he did a lot of traveling, and I took my class up in Lansing, Michigan. And so I went to my class, and the first evening, after the end of the first day, the instructor said, we're going to start working with some energy. And I was like, what's energy? I don't know anything about this. So she was like, make a ball with your hands and feel the energy between that. Now with a partner, put your hands next to each other and see how far back you can go and feel the energy. And so we did that. Next day, we learned about different moves, and I made friends with 2 other ladies there, and we started working on the head. And shortly after they started working on my head, I started shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't stop it. I didn't know what was going on. The 2 ladies that I was fortunate to become friends with knew some Reiki. I had no idea what Reiki was. And so they were trying to help me. And after that class, after that second day class, we went back, and I shook in my room for 3 to 4 hours. Didn't know why I was shaking, had no idea what we had done to create this what I thought was a reaction. So as class went on the next couple of days, I was very leery on letting anybody touch my head because I didn't want to shake. And so the girls helped me, or the ladies helped me through all that. And the instructor was like, there's something wrong with you. I don't know what's going on with you, but you need some serious help. And I was like, I don't know why I'm shaking. But anyways, we get through all that, and I am just still working in the ER, still didn't know why I shook. But what ended up coming out of that weekend was my hands. My hands started to feel different. I could feel the energy flowing through my hands from that weekend. And I could feel the ball of energy. I could feel my hands waking up, and I didn't know what this was. And it took a very long time for me to figure out what was going on. So through a course of going through all that, I was trying to figure out how I was going to get myself out of the ER, how I was going to make money to help support the family, and also find something that was not as stressful and that would accommodate my kids and getting them to school and everything else, just things much better. So in 2013, on Ash Wednesday, I had worked the night before. I worked 12 to 12, came home, got the kids up the next morning on Ash Wednesday, and I took them to school like I normally did. And after that, I drove home, and all I could think of driving home was, I cannot wait to go back to bed. I am exhausted. I need more sleep. I'm not going to be able to function later if I don't get more sleep. So I'm stopped at this red light, and the light turns green, and I start to go. And all of a sudden, I was hit at 50 miles an hour to my driver's side just right where the windshield and the end of the back panel of the tire hit. And the lady who hit me took off the whole front end of my car. I was going south, and by the time I had stopped, I was facing due west. When I realized what had happened, I had all these airbags off of me, and people were trying to get me out of the car. They didn't know if my car was going to catch fire because my car had no front end. It was completely gone. And so they pulled me out, and I'm shaking because of just what I had just been through. And that day kind of changed my life. I walked away from that accident, not with a scratch. I didn't get hurt. The airbags did their job. The seatbelt did its job. Mentally, I was a little shaken being hit that fast, but it changed. It changed that I was having conversations with the chiropractor who had started me off on this journey of more of a holistic way, and a way that I could look at how can I get myself out of the ER? What can I do to help me do something different? And so the realization after that was I need to let go of working in his office and find my own office. So after the accident and everything got settled down, I started looking for other offices, and it took me several months. Found my office, the one that I'm sitting in right now. It was a storage area when I looked at it, and the landlord that was in here, he was like, well, I can clean it out if you think. And I said, well, let me think about it. And I went home and I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? I think that I can make something out of this place. So on July 13th, 17th, I don't know, somewhere in there of 2013, I opened my doors. Never been a business person, didn't know really how to run a business, didn't know the ins and outs of it, and boy, did I make lots of mistakes, and I think I'm still making mistakes, but I'm a little bit farther ahead of the game now. And so I kept trying to build this business, but also keep working in the ER, kept, helping my children. And by this time also, in 2012, my father-in-law passed away, and my mother-in-law, who was setting up for his memorial, ended up falling and breaking her wrist and ended up coming living with us. So now I'm taking care of my mother-in-law. I have taken care of our children. I am working in an ER. I am working on trying to start up a new business. And my mother-in-law had lots of medical issues going on, and she took up a lot of time. And by the end of 2013, my mother-in-law had a knee replacement. My mom had a stroke. My kids, a couple of my kids were having some issues with school and trying to figure out how to help them through school. The following Ash Wednesday, that following February of 2014 now, on that Ash Wednesday, a friend of mine came up to me and said, she goes, do you still sell a certain products, supplement company that she was looking for some magnesium? And I said, yes, I still, use them and that. And she's like, could you order me some of these? And I said, yes. And she's like, so you've quit the ER and you're doing that full time? I said, no, because my business isn't quite up to par just yet. I said, I've had a lot of other things going on in my life and that. And she's like, maybe you have too many things going on, and that's why your business isn't moving in the right direction. And I said, well, I don't really want to quit the ER because I don't know if we can financially afford it. And she said to me, she goes, well, my husband was laid off for 3 months. We didn't know if we were going to make it. Every week we'd scrape our pennies and dollars to buy food and get through it. She goes, but at the end of the time he was laid off, she said, we were fine. We made it through there. Somehow, some way, the money stretched and we were able to make it through. Okay, so I pondered that, and I'm walking out the building, and I'm walking to my car, and I sit in my car, and next thing I know, my phone that I used to put Bible verses on popped up, and it was a Bible verse about money. And I was like, this is really weird. I'm like, I'm now getting a Bible verse telling me to not worry about money. She's telling me not to worry about money. I'm like, this is crazy. So she was just about to take off, and I rolled down my window, and I said, hey, Heather. I said, look what popped up. And she's like, you just need to leave the ER. So trusting was something that wasn't really, I mean, I would trust things, but that was a huge trust of mine. I'm like, should I do it? Should I not do it? I'm like taking big risks here, if I'm going to actually make it. So as I pondered it and I talked it over with my husband, I decided, well, I'm going to take the safe route. And my girlfriend said, you weren't supposed to take the safe route. She's like, you were supposed to just quit. I said, well, I already just did this. So I did a leave of absence. I did a family leave for 6 weeks just to see how things went. And things went pretty well. We did okay. And then I'm like, I'm not ready to go back. So I took another 6 weeks. And I'm contemplating, I'm like, oh my goodness, do I go back to work? Do I stay and just work on my business, continue to take care of my mother, my mother-in-law, my kids, and figure out how I'm going to get this business up and running and that. And then I was like, I'm leaving. I'm going to just leave. So on my daughter's birthday, May 29th of 2014, I went into the ER, visited my nurse manager, and I gave her my resignation letter. I said, I have 2.5 weeks left of my leave, and I'd like to use those 2.5 weeks as my notice that I am not returning back to the ER. And she said to me, please don't leave. She's like, I'll give you anything, just don't leave. I said, I can't stay here any longer. I have too many things in my pot as it's going on. I just need to let something go, and this is one of the bigger stressors that I need to let go. And she's like, well, she goes, just stay contingent. I'll give you whatever you want contingent. If you only want to work 1 day a month, she's like, just don't leave. And I said, no. And I think that was a big test too, a test of me to see if I was going to actually crumble under, look, they really want me, maybe I should stay. And I said, no. I said, but thank you for the offer. I really appreciate it. I was grateful that she thought so highly of me that she wanted me to stay, but I was done. I was just shy of my 20 years in the ER. If I would have stayed until October, I would have had 20 years in the ER. Never mind the 6 years of EMS that I had behind my belt. And I was like, no, I'm done. And so as I walked out of that ER, I didn't notice the sky or anything beforehand. But when I walked out, it was like the angels started to sing. The sky was so blue. I mean, I can just still see the blueness of the sky. The white puffy clouds, the birds were singing, the wind was was just a light breeze. It was a beautiful May 29th day. It was like the universe had opened up and was so proud of me that I made it through quitting or letting go of my job and all the stuff that the manager kept trying to pull me in. And I walked away feeling like all this just lifted up off my shoulders. So it was a great feeling. So then starts the journey of me now trying to build a business, taking care of everybody. My mother-in-law ended up going back home where her other son ended up taking care of her. She ended up with Alzheimer's. And so while she was being taken care of up there, I was still taking care of my mom, and I was still trying to learn just different supplements, different ways of helping others. And I decided that I was going to start learning how to use homeopathics in my office, herbs and toxoids. So there, I had an opportunity to go to Chautauqua by Boulder, and I went there for several years to learn about the homeopathics and that. And when I first got there, the doctor that was doing the teachings and everything, I went up to her and I said, could you help me? I'm like, I don't understand. And this is the first time I actually was able to find someone that I could actually say to them, I have this energy in my hands and I don't quite understand what it is. And she's like, she didn't really ever address that. She's like, I guess you have energy in your hands, so. And she didn't really say much, but all she would say was, wow, you have quite the board of people around you just helping you, Saint Germain and whoever else that there were. And I had not a clue on anything she was talking about. What do you mean I have this big board of people around me helping me? I don't know any of these people. I don't feel any of these people. I don't know any of these people. And so I started, that was kind of like, that's interesting. And then, they kept talking about chakras, and I'm like, what is a chakra? I don't know what a chakra is. And so it was me learning homeopathics, but now I'm learning more about the energy system of the body, and that I didn't really learn a lot. I learned a little bit with the cranial, and I was still doing the cranial, but I didn't quite understand how the chakra system all worked. And so I went there multiple times. Chautauqua is like at the foothills of the mountains, and it's an old village where people used to live in the late 1700s, early 1800s. So it's a very old area. And so I would go for walks, and down in Boulder, I ended up buying a Tibetan bowl and taking it into the woods and playing it in the woods, or I'd sit on a big rock, and I had no idea how to meditate, but I just did my own version of meditation because I was like, well, let's see where this all goes. And at one point I had the experience of where this came from. I'm not sure, but I'm not judging. And my grandmother appeared in the sky. And I was like, this is wild. And so I had different experiences, like I said, my grandmother appeared. I could feel like when I walked in certain areas, they felt like portals, and I had no idea what these portals were, but I was like, this is kind of interesting. And so that started me off on this more, okay, what else is out there? What else do I need to learn, about spirituality? And in that. And midst of being there, I decided to take a class in Santa Barbara, California. And on my way to Santa Barbara, as we're flying over the Rocky Mountains, and I'm sitting there, I realized I had lost my license. And ever since I've been on this journey, I should just say, I've had really wild and crazy experiences. And this was one of the wild and crazy experiences I had. And so I got to LA, and I was going to go to San Francisco, see my girlfriend from elementary, and then drive from San Francisco to Santa Barbara because, on the map, it doesn't look like it's that far away. Little did I know, it's a 6-hour drive. So up in the Rocky Mountains, flying over however many feet up in the air we are, I got this really sinking feeling in my gut, like, you don't have a license. And I'm like, where's my license? And I'm looking, and I'm like, so I tell the flight attendant, I said, I think I lost my license at the airport. She's like, well, there's nothing we can do about that right now. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm like, this is crazy. So once we landed in LA, I called my husband and I said, I've lost my license. I think it's somewhere in Metro Airport, and I need to get it. I don't know how I'm going to get home if I don't get it, and how am I going to rent a car, because they're not going to let me rent a car if I don't have a license. And I'm like, I'm now stuck. And so during that summer of 2015, I had met a lady who was selling Scalar products in that, and so I said, well, let me see. Debbie said she lived in California. I don't know where she lives, but let me see what she's doing. So this is like 9:30 at night, and I call her up, and I said, hi, Debbie, this is Kelly. Do you remember me from Michigan? And she's like, oh, yeah, I do, because we had gotten together several times when she was during the summer. And I said, I'm kind of in a pickle. I said, I lost my license in the airport, and if I travel to San Francisco, I have no way of renting a car, and I also have this seminar that I'm supposed to go to in Santa Barbara, but would you be willing to come pick me up at the airport, take me back to your house so that I can figure out how I'm going to get a license, so that, one, I can get home, two, I can rent a vehicle, because at this point I can't even rent a vehicle without a license. So her son was gracious enough to drive her and me over, or come pick me up at the airport and drive me home. And the next day she said to me, she goes, I talked to my husband, I'll drive you to Santa Barbara, and I'll spend the weekend with you, and maybe you'll get your license before you have to go on. And I said, okay. Well, I'm like, this is very nice. I'm like, I'm very grateful that you can actually get me to my seminar. So the next day we drove to Santa Barbara, tried to get in. So we got to our hotel, and then the people at the hotel didn't want to give me my hotel because I didn't have a license. And I said, well, I have the confirmation number. I have all these cards. I said, but I just don't have my license. I lost it in the airport, and my husband's trying to see if they can find it there so that I can get it. I said, and as soon as I get it, I have no problem showing you who I am and what I am, and here's my license. And after a good 10-15 minutes of convincing them to let me have my room, they decided to give me my room. So we stayed there, and I went to class. And during my class, they handed out some supplements, and one was Camu, and the other one was glutathione, and they were 2 separate cups. And I took some, and then I took the other cup, and maybe about 2 minutes later, I don't even think it was 5 minutes later, I started feeling really wild. I just didn't feel good. I started sweating. I couldn't even hold my head up because I felt so nauseated. I felt really horrible. And the next thing I know, I felt like my being was coming out of my body, which I've never experienced in my life. And so I had texted my friend who was sitting a couple ways down from where I was, and I said, I don't feel good. I said, I'm really struggling here. So she came over, and then one of the things that they did to try to get me, one, back, sort of, I guess you could say, back in my body at the time is what I knew. They ended up taking me out of the building, helping me because I could barely walk on my own, all the way to the Pacific Ocean, which was across the yard, across a road, and then into the beach and into the water. And that's when I first started to actually finally feel like I was getting back to normal. So I had that experience. The same time, in 2015, the family went on a road trip and with an RV, and we were also learning resilience. And I was learning how, I'm learning about, the chakras, and I'm learning about all the spirituality. And so all this was going on, and we go on this road trip, and it ended up just being one thing after another, and the RV broke down. The RV broke down. We had to leave it in Iowa. We were towing a car so that we could go different places. We got stopped by the police because the license plate light was off in Arizona. We decided we wanted to go to Mercy Verde, and on the way up, we lost the serpentine belt on the car, and on this plateau of this mountain ended up becoming a rainstorm, and we had people stopping to try to help us get the serpentine belt on. And while we're there, this electrical storm was coming, and just as we finally got the serpentine belt on, all of our hair was like sticking out like this because we were so electrically charged from this storm that we got in just in time before the rain started and made it back down, and we never got to see those. We got to see elk. We got to all this stuff, and then we got a call that our house had flooded. And so now we had to hightail it all the way back. Well, on the way back, we ended up blowing a tire. Had to change that. Then we got stuck in a traffic jam. And it just was one thing after another. And it was building our resilience, our resilience, and how we could work together as a family. And I just now know that this was just all part of me working towards my spirituality that I didn't realize at the time, because it was like, this is like crazy. Who's ever going to believe this? I had people telling me that I needed to write a book about this crazy adventure we had for our family vacation. So we made it all through that. I'm still going to Colorado to learn bioenergetics. And one of the, I don't know, probably a year and a half later, the one instructor comes up to me and she's like, you would probably be really good at color therapy. And then the other one said, tuning forks. Have you ever thought of tuning forks? I'm like, I don't know. What's a flipping tuning fork? I don't know. And that. So nothing was ever said. And I left there and I went home and I started contemplating about tuning forks. And I'm like, I don't know anything about tuning forks. Where am I going to find tuning forks? Who does tuning forks? No one around here that I know does tuning forks. So I called up my instructor and I said, you said I should look into tuning forks. And I said, do you have anybody in mind that I should go looking for a tuning fork for? And she goes, I know nobody, but all I'm getting in my head is, and I have no idea who this person is, look up this guy, Christopher Timms. Just look him up. She goes, I don't know who he is. I don't know him from Adam. All I just keep getting this echo in my head is Christopher Timms. So I Googled him and looked him up, and sure enough, he popped up, and there he was. And so I'm like, okay, tuning forks. What do I do with these things? Where am I going with these things? So then Christopher had a 3 set, and because I wasn't ready, I didn't know if I really wanted to learn this or not. So I decided to go the cheapest route that I could see, and that was the Egyptian Cubit, the Ascension, and the Expansion fork. And they were a trio that he was selling. And so I decided this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to start here, see what these forks are all about. And I listened to a few things on his website, but I was like, okay, I'll sign up for the newsletter. But I never opened up any of his newsletters. I never listened to anything he said. And I just worked with the 3 forks for a while, and then I was like, you know what? I really like how these 3 forks work. So then I decided, you know what? I am going to buy the A440s. And because if I don't buy the A440s, then I can't take the tuning fork class, and I don't know how to do the tuning forks if I don't have the forks. So bought the forks, took the online course, I wake up every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. I had my little cheat sheet out, and I would teach myself how to do a level 1 every single morning. Once I got done with that and got comfortable, I decided, well, let's see what level 2 is like. My only issue is every time I listened to Christopher, I'd fall asleep during his lectures. So I'd fall asleep during the lectures, but I could stay awake long enough to watch him do the technique on Yolanda. So again, 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing my tunings. Now I'm adding level 2, and then I added level 3, and I'm still going to Chautauqua, but that journey is ending, and because it didn't feel right anymore. So the last time that I went out there, I had offered people sessions. Christopher never looked at my technique. We never really talked. I just went off all of his sheets, and I offered people a level 3 tuning at Chautauqua in their hall there. And so after class, I had 3 people sign up and laid them on the floor, it was like on the floor, but I had cushions underneath them. I put on shaman drumming as I was doing everybody's tuning, and I'm like, well, I hope this is all going right, because this is the way I've taught myself how to do this. And those were my first 3 people that I ever did tuning fork work on, were my classmates from bioenergetics. Then during that time in that classroom, I met a lady who she did readings, and I had no idea, didn't understand how readings went. But she kept saying, you know what, you should check out this yogi. I'm like, what's a yogi? Who's a yogi? Where do I find a yogi? So she said, look up Sagru. I've had some friends see him, and there's an ashram in Tennessee. She thinks this might be a good path. Well, okay. So I have my tuning forks. I decide, well, let's see what Sagru is like. So then I did his inner engineering, and I learned how to do Shambhavi. And I was doing that in the morning and in the evening. So I was doing that twice a day, 21 minutes twice a day. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a class. In 2019, I wanted to go down to Tennessee and do a class, and it was all on basically you facing death. It was kind of like a class to look at how you view death. And it was a 4-day class, and so I did that class and came home, and my husband at this time was just, didn't know what to do with me. And early on, when all this first started, he was giving me a hard time. He's like, why do you need to do all this? And this was probably 2012 when I said this. I said, I don't know why I'm doing all this. I just know somewhere deep inside me, I need to do this. This is for me. This is something I have to do. It's some knowing that I don't even know what this knowing is telling me that I need to follow these steps. And I don't know. I'm like, I just need your support. I support you with everything you do. This is what I need from you. I need you to support me along this journey. So I get home from the ashram, kind of beat up from that. I had really sore legs, but I was kind of on cloud 9 because, here I thought I went through a death. And it was quite the experience. And again, I was going back and forth doing my Shambhavi and doing my tuning fork work and trying to get all this done before I got up and got going and got to my office. And my office was still struggling, and I'm still trying to figure out my spirituality. And I'm like, where is all this going? And I had no idea, but all I knew was I had this knowing. I had a knowing that I needed to get somewhere. Where that somewhere was, I had no idea. And I had a girlfriend that we would talk every other week and she did a lot of spirituality stuff and everything else, and she would say, you don't want to get mixed up in that. You don't want to get mixed up in this. And she kind of kept me on a straight and narrow path. If I kind of started to veer off, she's like, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out, because I never really had one single person helping me figure this out. Where am I going? What am I doing? And so here I am just floundering with my spirituality. At one point, I went to my pastor and said, I just found out that there's a Gospel of Thomas. I said, do you have that book of Gospel of Thomas? And he was like, no, but why do you want that? I said, why not? I'm like, I'm interested. Why don't you have it? And he didn't really say. And through my process of whatever I was going through, I came to the realization, after finding multiple books and listening to multiple audiobooks, that in my experience, in my way, and this could be different from you, and I'm not saying one's right or wrong, but in my experience, I started viewing Jesus as much differently by this time than I did ever in my life. I realized that he was more of showing me how to become like him, showing that there's more than, I didn't come here to save me from my sins. I'm here to show you that you can be like me or better. And so it made it very awkward then as time went on, because then my kids were going, my husband was still steeped in his religion, and he wanted the kids confirmed, and I didn't want to take communion anymore. And so then there was a lot of playing games of, I would go up for communion, but I would say, no, thank you, no, thank you. And the pastor would send me an email like, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. I'm not taking communion, but I'm just supporting my family. And so he just really never understood. So that was definitely a change within me that happened. Books during this time were pretty big with me. One of the books that I really listened to probably 15 times was Brene Brown, the book of The Power of Vulnerability. And one of the things that she had in there was about don't puff up, don't shrink, stand your sacred ground. And that little mantra has helped me when I was feeling small, or if I was unsure, or if I feel uncomfortable. I still say it now. I still give it to my kids and say, look, I know you're going to go do this, you're going to go do that, but, use this little mantra. Don't puff up, don't shrink, just stay your sacred ground and just let it go. And I'm like, you will make it through whatever you're doing. So after 2019, the pandemic hit, I started paying attention, and I'm not quite sure why, but I was starting to pay attention a little more to Christopher's emails. And the Sound Keepers Conference was there, and I was looking at that, and I'm like, you know what? I think I want to go and do something like this. So I asked my oldest, who had a driver's license, and a friend of hers had a driver's license, would you help me get to Florida, drive down there and back? I said, I don't want to drive it myself. I said, I'd rather have somebody help me get from point A to point B without stopping. So we three took off, and we drove straight through to Florida. One of the things that I told my daughter, I said, you know what, since you're helping me down here, when I'm in class, here, I'm going to get you 2 Disney tickets. You two take the car and go to Disney, and I'm going to be at the Sound Keepers Conference. And that was the first time I ever met Christopher. And I really never talked to him until that point. We never talked about the tuning forks. He never looked at how I did my tuning forks. But I decided this is what I was going to do. And that class must have changed something within me, because it made me want to start taking more classes and figure out more of my spirituality and how am I going to get to that Jaman Mukti and beyond. And so that's when I started taking the mystery school and started doing more with the tuning forks. And the pandemic was a blessing to my business, because up until that point, my business wasn't thriving. I had clients, but it wasn't thriving. It was struggling really bad. And the pandemic, because I didn't take other classes and I wasn't flying here and I wasn't doing this, I was able to get my business out of debt. I was able to start building more of a business, and all this kind of started happening and started working out as I was going to the Sound Keepers conference, and started going towards the mystery school, and started going more towards the tuning fork work. And so I find that as much as I realized the pandemic was something that I wasn't concerned with, when that first hit, I didn't understand. I was like, I never feared it. I just never feared it, because there was something always within me saying, this is nothing to worry about. So, my business made it through. My business actually got out of debt from it. So I'm grateful for that aspect of it. I'm grateful that I saw the email for the Sound Keepers and started heading towards that way. And so I started with Mystery School. Mystery School helped me start understanding more about things that I didn't quite understand, that the books that I would read and the books that I had gave me knowledge, but it didn't give me the knowledge like Mystery School gave me. And so I was very, very grateful for that. It's been lots of learning. I've had challenges these last 6 years, challenges of getting to Mystery School, or just how to take care of my parents and how am I going to get my kids taken care of. Just all that kind of stuff would come up during this next 6-year journey with my spirituality. And so I've benefited along the way. I realize that from 2010 to now, it has been a journey. It has been one with many trials, many tribulations, lots of cool things, lots of not cool things, But I remember just even in my 20s and in my 30s, before all this started, I just had this thing there had to be more to life. There has to be more to life, more than what I'm experiencing. I'm like, yeah, it's fun to go do this. Yeah, it's fun to go do that. But nothing was completely, and still isn't completely, fully there. That just, it just lights me up, and I'm like, this is it. I still look for, there's got to be more to life than what meets the eye. And that also keeps me pursuing and working on my spirituality and doing my tuning forks on me. And I love doing them on my clients. And I came up with a mantra too. I don't remember when it was, but I started saying, it was more of a meditation mantra kind of thing, was unconditional love, compassion. It went from forgiveness to acceptance, because I like acceptance now better than forgiveness, and grace. I wanted a heart full of unconditional love, because I look at unconditional love as just the ultimate. I don't feel like there's anything higher or more profound than love. Whether you believe in God, whether you believe in the universe, I feel that love is the ultimate vibration. Making that unconditional love and working on seeing everybody from that unconditional love is what I strive for. I also look for compassion. Compassion with whoever's going through something, or compassion for something exciting. I feel like compassion is a huge part of spirituality. I would say, and I'll come back to what I was about to say, but then acceptance. Accepting for things that aren't feeling great or aren't good, but also accepting the things that are great, things that, just light you up. But that acceptance is so important. My mom could not forgive people to save her life. And the last few years of her life, I just kept telling my mom, you need to learn to forgive. I said, you're shackling yourself because you won't forgive. And she would just say to me, some things are just so unforgivable, I cannot forgive. And I said, all you're doing is hurting yourself. I said, it doesn't make those horrible things that you feel that you've had happen to you, it doesn't make them go away. It just changes the way they are within you, and it doesn't shackle you. And she just couldn't understand, and all I would ever hear was, that's just too painful. I can never accept, I can never forgive that person. So acceptance and forgiveness is huge. It's huge. It helps relieve the body of those things that have hurt you so bad that I feel acceptance is very important. And I know, and then the fourth thing was grace. Grace, I know we all get grace. But I also feel like you can also give grace. Not only do we have it, but we can give it for whenever those times where people are just having a really hard time, or they've done something, that they may have done it to you or done it to somebody else, and you look inside your own heart and you give that grace to them and say, I know that this wasn't right that they did this, but I give you this grace because I have this unconditional love for you. And so I view those four as really big pillars on the spiritual journey. Some of my mantras, I would get up in the morning and I would say, I have an unconditional love in my heart, compassion, acceptance, and grace. And then I would say, I'm working on my humility. I'm working on my humbleness. I'm working on my wisdom and my knowing. I'm allowing these things to just come into my field and just let me experience them. And that's how I've kind of worked along with my spirituality. Am I there yet? I don't think so. I don't know where I'm at. But do I need to know? There's part of me that does. My fragments, they're like attached to, where am I at? Am I close to Jivanmukti? I don't know. I have people that say yes. I'm like, well, when am I going to experience it? So I'm still working on that journey. Do I have some cool things that have happened? Yes. I do exercises in the morning. They're not huge, but I exercise 10, 15, 20 minutes in my bedroom. And some of the things that I do is I have my feet up, but I also like in the darkness watching the energy between my legs as I move them out, or I like to see the aura around my legs. And I've kind of feel like all that looks like plasma to me. And in some of the geophysicists that I listen to, they talk about plasma with the sun, but I also kind of feel like there's more of a plasma within us instead of what we consider air. I think there's more plasma, but that's my own opinion. What else? At one point in my journey, I woke up in the middle of the night and I looked over to where the smoke detector was, and I saw all these geometry shapes. There were triangles and rectangles and all these different things with like white light around them all, and I would close my eyes and open them back up and they would still be there. I don't see that right now anymore, but I thought that was a really cool experience. As for my ears, I hear the sound of God all the time. I hear them when they're screaming at me. I hear them in highs and low tones. When it's more of a dusk or a darker, not even a darker, I do see the grainy textures, but I have seen it, and I do every now and see the grainy textures with light. I see things move. Not everything seems to, I can see the walls move. Can't go through them or touch them, but I do see those. And so these are some of the phenomena that I do see. I try not to get stuck on them. I try to keep my focus more on light, sound, and presence. I do that before I go to sleep. I do it as soon as I wake up in the morning. Anytime I get out of the bed in the middle of the night, I get up and it's light, sound, and presence. Anytime that if I'm having a bad day and I can remember, I try to do my light, sound, and presence then. Or if I'm just sitting around doing nothing, I try to remember light, sound, and presence. Sometimes when I'm driving my car, I'm like, oh my goodness, I haven't done light, sound, and presence lately. So when I'm stopped at a street light, I will sit there and do light, sound, and presence. So I'm constantly working on me. I want to be the best version of me that I can and just work towards just being, that divine spirit, that divine person. I'm not trying to be any better than anybody else. Actually, I like to hide. I don't like a lot of acknowledgement. I think that's probably why I didn't sleep very well last night, because I was thinking of this podcast. I don't usually talk about my story. I will use my story with my clients if I'm trying to make a point on what they're doing. I'll take bits and pieces. But I'm not one to be flashy. I'm not one to want to stand out in a crowd. I tend to be more laid back, and if I can go walk through nature, or if I can go swim in a lake or play in the ocean, that's me. That's me. I want to be part of nature. And that's me, and that's my spiritual journey. And does anybody have any questions for me?
Wow.
So.
Thanks for sharing, Kelly. It's wonderful to hear your raw and honest adventure and experience. I was totally captivated the whole time.
It's been a journey. My husband at one point questioned my devotion or my love for God, and he sat in the bathroom, tears in his eyes, and said, "Do you even love God?" And I looked at him. I said, "I believe in God. I've never stopped believing in God. I don't quite agree with what the religion talks about with Jesus." I said, "But most definitely I believe in God." And so, yeah, it's been a journey. My husband's been on a journey with me. He tolerates a lot from me, and I'm just grateful that he's been with me all this time.
Oh, that's good. And in fact, how the adventure is saying that you know and love God even more now than when you were just in the religious box. And I totally get what you're saying about how we see Jesus as a fellow seeker on the path than what has been told to us in the framework of the religion and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, thank you, Guy. I appreciate you.
Me too.
I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. It's good to hear your voice.
you have been the only one who had a really positive, strong effect during tuning. It was a very powerful experience.
Yep. So
Yeah,
I love the tuning work. The tuning fork work is just amazing. It's like a dance. To me, it's a dance. It's when I can just take the forks and just twirl them and just clear things out. It's really a neat experience, just being one with those forks.
Yeah. Well, you're being one with all of you more that way, you know. That's how that sort of works. That's the beginning of the process. Eventually, it'll be stronger and more aspects of you will fall into the picture, and you will be amazed at how it all comes together. We're all looking forward to that. For each of us, you know, we all go through this thing. Hard to put words to it sometimes.
Yep.
I appreciate all the people in the class. Just to be in our classes, you know, it's a unique experience in this class. Not like regular class. The part about God that we understanding is a relationship that very few people understand. It's that nobody going nowhere with nothing to do that we all are, that's learning how to be doing something.
Yep.
As we're connected to it. And we have to be able to follow along with that. Even though we don't see it consciously, you're starting to see some aspects of it already in yourself. And some people see more or less, depends on how psychic they are. I had no psychic experience really to speak of flying helicopters. There wasn't much chance to do that, but I was aware of things differently than other pilots were. But I couldn't talk to any of them about what I knew.
Right.
It was an isolating experience to be in a helicopter. But you get to see so many things, and you get to help so many people. It's like an amazing thing. And that feeling is part of what you need all the time when you're doing this kind of work, when you're learning it, especially when you're learning it. But sometimes when you have things going on in your life that are making your life less enjoyable, those are times that you have to reinforce your recognition of yourself in that positive way, so that the things that are happening don't take you down with them. You want to stay up and all that. So you've gone through a lot of struggles back and forth on those things too, I think, with your relationships, family stuff and all that. So going through that is part of the process of getting above it all. Part of that is extension. And so that's why we have to go through it, because otherwise you won't know how to do it. So you have to keep seeing the stuff that's not right so you can make yourself right during those times. So you keep growing that way. That's why everything that seems to be bad must be accepted as good so you can get over it quicker, you know. It's a quick process when you know what you're doing, but when you don't know what you're doing, it's very confusing. So we got to keep reminding each other when things are like, you know, more difficult. That's somebody telling you something. It gets more difficult.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your class tonight. It was very busy. You were very busy. You covered a lot of territory.
Yeah. It's been a a wild wind journey, and I mean, I've got my classmates from mystery school in Sage, and just from the ministry program now. You know, I value all my friendships that I have made, because I actually have people that I can talk to.
Yeah, that's the thing you don't have anywhere else.
Yep. So it's a very important to me, that I have these friendships to keep me on the straight and narrow, but also just people that I can relate to and talk to. You know, my husband doesn't quite understand. He listens, but he doesn't understand, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
Kelly, I understand that too, about the husbands not quite tuning in the same way. Yeah, I was going to ask if you have tuned your husband to your kids ever. Do they ever want that?
I have tuned my husband's had multiple tunings.
Okay.
So yes, he has. I've used the tuning forks on a couple of my kids, ones that will let me do it.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I did one on my mom probably a couple months before she passed. My dad's very reluctant to have it done.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, if there's a time that's right, he'll get it. If he doesn't, well, you know, sometimes maybe I can sneak it in at some point, you know, but I don't know.
Right.
We'll see.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Do you still go to church with them? Do you still go?
I do. Actually, on Easter, I will go to church with them. I have kind of made what am I trying to say? I've made nice with communion now, because before
Right.
I was like, I'm not doing this. I don't need this. Now I look more as, okay, I'm just being grateful for what Jesus has offered me. You know,
Right.
or I will go up there and I still will just shake my hand, like, and all the pastors look at me like, well, why'd you even come up here? Well, if I sit, especially like on Sunday, if I sit back in the pew and don't come up, my dad's going to ask me a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
And you know what? He's 88 years old. I'm not rocking the boat for him at 88 years old.
Right.
So it's easier for me to just go up, participate, sit back down. It makes him feel good. I'm solid in my beliefs, and I'm solid in where my journey's going, that I'm okay with it. You know, I'm not looking at it like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm, you know, hindering my process. I don't look at that anymore. And as for the school or the church that my kids went to and my husband still goes, I've gone there a couple times to church, and when Christopher says, you know, you get the left foot of fellowship, the last time I was there, the younger kids were, you know, that went to school with my kids, would come up to me and talk to me. No one else would come up and talk to me. The one lady was extremely rude to me, and when I walked out of there, I said, you know what? I don't ever have to come back here again. I said, you're more than welcome to come here. You're more than welcome to usher, but please don't ask me to come back here, because I don't want to.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's good that you can make peace with it, and because I had my parents are very super religious also, and so yes, the whole church thing was difficult to deal with. And they wanted me to go to church, and I didn't want to go. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, even my dad a couple years ago kept saying, "Don't you believe in God anymore?" And I'd be like, "Yes, Dad, I believe in God." "Why don't you go to church?" I said, "I do." Not very often. I didn't say that part, but I do. I wasn't lying. I still do.
Right.
Do I go very often? Maybe 3 times a year, but hey, it's still going to church, right? I'm not lying.
Right. Oh, there's lots of people that only go like twice a year. They go Christmas and Easter, and that's it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So, but yes. So thank you all. I'm just delighted that all 3 of you could be on, and thank you for listening to my story, and what a story it has been, and I'm just grateful to be here.
Well, we're grateful to have you.
Yeah, and I just want to congratulations on how do you say the courage it took to take that leap of faith, especially back in 2012, 13, to quit the ER and to get on that path, and so it's shows the courage and the conviction.
Yeah. It hasn't been an easy journey. It really hasn't. But looking back, I wouldn't have done it any other way. Lots of lessons have been learned. I'm grateful for the times that I've had. It allowed me to do things that I wouldn't have been able to do if I was still in the ER. And so I look at it as a big blessing. So, and my car accident was huge, because I needed something to shake the heck out of me to finally let all the stuff between me and the chiropractor kind of separate that a little bit and realize that I could do this on my own. So, do I still have self-doubt? Oh, yeah. But, I keep working through those and just keep letting my sandbags go.
Yes. Best way to be. Yes.
So, but, well, let's stop the recording. I don't think we need to record anymore.